As I was preparing for this week for this sermon, many things came to mind. One of the major things that came to mind is how was I going to be able to tie this in, apply it, what we call text in our town. Many ideas came to my head. One thing stuck though, and it's the one main thread, main topic that we will continue to use throughout. Rejoice, even in the face of adversity. This brings us up to our main passage, Philippians 4, 2 through 9. The first part is Philippians 4, 2 through 3, which we'll call the Disagreement. It starts with, I plead with Euodia and I plead with Syntyche to agree with each other in the Lord. Euodia and Syntyche were very prominent women within the Philippi church. These two women, we don't know how high they were, whether they were, like what we would consider board members, whether they had a lot of respect, what type of respect they had. We're not 100% sure where they lie as far as this. We do know that they had a disagreement, and Paul, this is the reason for writing this letter. It's because of this disagreement that these two women had within the church. It was obviously big enough that it got all the way back to Paul. Now the fact, we don't know exactly how big it was though. Some people speculate that it was big enough to divide the whole entire church. Some people think it was just minor, not even doctrinal. Those are pure speculation, so we're not 100% sure how far the disagreement went. Then the passage continues to go on. Yes, and I ask you, loyal yokefellow. Well, this loyal yokefellow, we don't know exactly who he was. We do know that Paul generally wrote, when he wrote to a church, we generally know he wrote to either the pastor or the head person of the church, the one who was going to be reading the letter to the church. So you could speculate on behalf of that, but here he doesn't mention, so we cannot speculate. Then the rest of the message continues to go, help these women who have contended at my side in the cause of the gospel, along with Clement and the rest of my fellow workers. We know that Euodia and Syntyche were very strong women for the gospel. They did a lot for the gospel. Then it mentions Clement. Nothing is said about Clement besides what we have already, besides what the Bible says right there, along with Clement. That's all we know about Clement. And the rest of my fellow workers, whose names are in the book of life. Have you ever worked with a coworker? Had a disagreement with a coworker that you weren't able to give up? Maybe it was such a minor thing that other people looked at it as really minor, but you thought it was a major. I've had those disagreements with coworkers, especially in the construction field. You tend to have more disagreements because you tend to get hard-headed people. And the situation with Euodia and Syntyche, obviously their disagreement was big enough and long enough that it got back to Paul, which Paul was obviously a distance away, and Paul was in prison. That's another thing we have to remember during this whole entire thing. That brings us up to our next point. Philippians 4, 4 through 7. It's called Rejoice. It starts with, rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. What Paul is stating here is, as a Christian, as a person of the faith, we need to be showing, or in this case, Euodia and Syntyche need to be showing their joyfulness in the Lord, their gentleness to all people, letting people know and being the light to the other people. Then it goes on to say the Lord is near. Well, the NIV states the Lord is near. The New King James Version states the Lord is near. The King James Version also states, the Lord is near. I really tend to like the NLT, the New Living Translation, how it states it. The Lord is coming soon. That gives a total different sense to the meaning of this passage. If you read it, the Lord is coming soon. Because all of a sudden you take from a nice passage, and now all of a sudden the Lord is coming soon. Now you have a sense of you need to be ready because the Lord is coming. Then it goes on to say in verse 6, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything. So basically what Paul is stating here is don't worry about just anything, but make sure you worry in everything. Make sure you bring everything to God by prayer and petition with thanksgiving. Paul states, present your requests to God. And that lives true to even our daily lives now. Everything that anytime we are anxious, anytime we have worries, we need to bring those to God by prayer and petition. Making sure that we have a joyful heart, rejoicing in the Lord all the time. And then verse 7, and the peace of God which transcends all understanding. You can take the word transcends out and put in the word exceeds or excellent. And it gives a new little different meaning. It doesn't change it, but it gives a different understanding. So again, verse 7, and the peace of God which transcends or exceeds all understanding will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Now I've been told in my life, many times, be thankful for what you have been given. Be thankful for the little things. Have you ever been told to be joyful about stuff? I think that's basically what Paul is stating to Euodia and Syntyche, is to make sure that you are joyful. Make sure you're rejoicing in the Lord. For the things that He does for us. Just like when you were told to be joyful for something so minor that you don't think it's really worth acknowledging God, we need to make sure we're joyous over it. We're rejoicing because God did that for us. It's the same thing that Paul is stating to Euodia and Syntyche here. And then we can go on to the next section, Philippians 4, 8 through 9, basically the conclusion of this passage. It talks about our thoughts and our actions. Verse 8 says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy. Another way of saying it is, instead of praiseworthy, is worthy of praise, if that helps. Think about such things. So basically what Paul is stating here is he is writing this to Euodia and Syntyche and telling them to think upon these things. Make sure you put good thoughts in your head. Just like we are supposed to every single day. If you take a look at it, what are our thoughts? Do we have good, kind thoughts? Do we have noble thoughts? Do we have true thoughts? Do we have righteous thoughts? Pure thoughts? Lovely, admirable thoughts? Not all the time. But Paul is stating to Euodia and Syntyche to make sure you have these type of thoughts. Then it goes on to say, whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, do these things. And basically what he is saying there is think upon these things, then turn around and act upon them. Make sure that you are showing a good intentions so everybody can see. A great way of thinking about this is through our thoughts. Now, have you ever heard of the phrase, your thoughts lead to your actions? Or some other people phrase it a little differently. What I'm trying to say here is we need to make sure we have good, clean thoughts. If you have a bad thought, you tend to dwell on those thoughts, and those thoughts can lead to poor actions or reactions, giving us, the wrong ideas. So we just need to make sure we have good, clean thoughts. Those will lead to proper actions, just as Paul is trying to state to Euodia and Syntyche here. He is trying to tell them to have good, clean, pure thoughts, and then work onto those thoughts. Act on those thoughts. What did this mean to them back then? Well, first of all, we have to remember Paul was in prison here. We can't just think of Paul just sitting down on his couch, writing this nice letter to these people. We have to understand that Paul being in prison was kind of a testament to these people. The fact that Paul was able to write, rejoice, rejoice, that's more of a testament to these people. Maybe because we have to understand Paul didn't know if he was going to live or die. So by writing stuff like this, it gave these people a sense of, well, if Paul can do it and he doesn't know if he's going to live or die, then why can't we? We also have to remember during this time, these people were persecuted for their faith by their pagan neighbors. It wasn't like they were just, kind of like what we think of nowadays, where we just get to go to church, enjoy our day. No, they were being persecuted. Every time they went to church, they were persecuted for it. So look, you have to remember those things while reading this passage. And another thing, what it meant is, in the face of adversity, Euodia and Syntyche's differences needed to be ironed out, because their differences were so minute in the grand scheme. Paul was basically stating to them, get over it. Work out your differences. Make sure that everything you do is for the Lord. So what does this mean to us? What does it mean now? It is a great example for the church. Have you ever ran across a church that is having differences? It can tear a church apart. I've seen many churches being divided over small little differences. They lose sight of what the purpose is. And we just got to continue to work out the differences and not lose sight. In our everyday lives, we run across differences and adversities through life. I don't think anybody realizes, but we are persecuted for what we do, for being with Christ, for loving Christ. We are persecuted for that to this day. Whether we believe it or not, we are persecuted. Take for instance, if some of you don't believe me that we are persecuted to this day, take for instance, God is being taken out of everything in the school systems. My wife is a teacher, and God is taken out of every single aspect. You can teach a Muslim about the religion, of Muslims. You can teach about anything else, but you cannot teach about Christianity, Islam, whatever you want to teach about, Buddhism, but Christianity you cannot teach about. So to this day we are being persecuted. We have to remember the ultimate goal though. What did Christ do for us? Because of Christ, because of what He did on the cross for us, we have eternal hope. So in the midst of persecution, in the midst of adversity throughout this world, we need to remember what Christ did on the cross for every single one of us. It gave us a reason to live. In my opinion, Euodia and Syntyche really kind of lost focus on this, what Christ had really done for them. By having these differences and having them go over a long stretch in a long period of time, I really believe that they lost focus of this. And we need to remember, no matter what differences we have, Christ needs to be shown through our thoughts, first in our thoughts, and then through our actions. We need to make sure that Christ is constantly at the forefocus. Christ died on the cross for us. So we need to remember to show him through our actions. Show our love. Show everything we can. Be gentle, just like Paul stated to Euodia and Syntyche. Show our gentleness in the face of adversity.